Mystical Reed.
Oh my God. All right. I'm sorry. Welcome to the show. We're now recording. Reed has arrived right on time. I'm going to share this before we start, okay? And this is Gandalf the Grey. And the hobbits were giving Gandalf a hard time for being late, and Gandalf says, I'm never late. Wizards are never late. They arrive precisely when they mean to.
Yeah. There's Reed.
There's Reed. Man, it totally disrupted my whole plan for the start of this show.
What was that?
I thought it was going to be going this way, and then you appeared and totally changed everything.
And then disappeared.
And
And then
then
reappeared.
double, triple. So it turns out today's topic is Reed's life story. Go ahead.
No, I don't think so.
When did it start? When did this start? When did all this start?
Drum roll.
Centuries ago.
Here's a show. We had a show idea, Pete. Let me run this by you. The idea for the show was to bring people on and ask them the moment they realized. When was the moment that you realized you carry a bottle of water with you everywhere you go?
Peter, do you do that?
No. I know somebody that does, though.
You don't always have water?
Mm-mm. A big jug.
You have a jug of water?
Yeah.
So you do carry water with you?
Don't you?
Yeah, that's what we're saying. Like it's like a habit everyone picks up on their own, like independently.
Carrying water?
Yeah.
It's a good point.
Like, because
I mean,
I
it
remember
is.
there was a time in my life when like it wasn't my habit to always have water. And then at some point, I just always had water with me. It was a glass or a bottle next to the bed. There's some kind of bottle in the car. I got something at my desk.
Yeah, I always had water on my nightstand, like when I was a kid.
Yeah. I
Like
did.
I
Yeah,
always
I
had-
love having a glass of water on my nightstand.
Yeah, I was always told to have. I needed to drink water the first thing when I woke up in the morning.
Huh.
And I can't remember. That was like early. I had to be just like 7, 8 years old. Like there was always water.
Yeah, I always had these little red cups by my bedstand all the time. Because it's the worst. You wake up and you're so thirsty sometimes.
And then the water tastes so good.
So good.
But
Yeah,
now
it
that
really
I'm like,
does.
it tasted the best when I was a kid and I had it on my nightstand, because I wasn't drinking water all the time throughout the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
And
remember
that water changed forms over the years, but like there was always a liquid.
yeah. Always with you.
I remember how good it would feel like when I was shaking like a leaf. I was coming off of a big run or something, and I take a couple of drinks, like 10 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock, and then like 15, 20 minutes later, like my hands stopped shaking, and I was like, oh, this is great.
Oh
This
yeah.
this is amazing. Because I get the shakes. Like I would get my hands would move.
Dude, I had the wildest dream last night.
Water didn't work though. I needed alcohol.
So I had a dream last night that somebody was offering me some black tar heroin.
Mm-hmm.
And I said in the most logical way, it was the weirdest using dream ever. I said in the most logical way, I really want to get high with you, but I can't, because if I do, I'm just going to want to keep using it. So it was very matter of fact. It was just,
Yeah.
that looks awesome. I really wish I could, but I can't. There wasn't anything more than that.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's it. That's the everything we do is practical. Like there's no beliefs or fears need to be involved there. It's a simple, I know I don't want to make that choice for X reason. That's it.
Yeah.
It
No
was
big
as
deal.
clear as day. It was super simple.
Uh-huh.
It's like I stopped eating Totino's pizza rolls. Finally, I stopped eating the pizza rolls because when I do, I wake up in the morning and I have a bad time. And so now I just don't do that. I just don't choose to do it because I've had enough bad times.
Yeah.
With the pizza rolls.
Yes. Yeah.
Man. So I'll tell you this story. I had a really weird dream like 2 or 3 nights ago, and I'm one of those dudes, like I never remember my dreams. Like I know that I had a dream, but I can't remember it. But this one I actually remembered, and I slept through the whole thing. So you guys, I'm assuming, have had those dreams where like you were either drinking or using. Did you guys ever have any of those?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, and I've never gotten a lot of those, and I've been sober for a while now, and I had the most bizarre ever. I had so I was in the dream. I was dreaming that I was asleep, and I, who was asleep, was dreaming about drinking. And so then, and the character in the dream, which was me, I couldn't recognize if I had been drinking or not. And I'd started like rationalizing, like that would not be possible. Like it wasn't possible for me to drink because I was asleep. But then I started remembering like all this weird stuff, like from the past, where like I might have actually taken a drink, but I didn't remember that I took a drink. Like I wasn't sure if I'd done it or not. And then that I stayed asleep for the whole thing, and I kept going like back and forth. And then when I woke up in the morning, when I actually woke up, I was like, it wasn't possible for that person to drink because that person was me. And I haven't been drinking. There was like a character, like I was dreaming in the dream, if that makes sense.
Uh-huh.
Inception.
It was like 2 layers of dream about alcohol.
Wow.
It was the weirdest thing ever. And so when I woke up, actually, I was like, I had to think about it for a while because I was going, and I just laid there. I was going, wait a second. I was dreaming about the drinking dream, and I was having the drinking dream about the person that was having the drinking dream.
In the dream.
Yeah, in the dream. And I couldn't figure out, the character in the dream, which was me, couldn't figure out if he had been drinking or not.
Interesting.
And then I woke up and I was like, well, the character's sober and I'm sober because I haven't had a drink in 6.5 years.
I don't know. Maybe you have and you don't know.
Ah.
It's possible. I mean, it was weird though. It was a really trippy experience.
I had a friend who woke up. This was really cool. It was like a few months ago. He called me. He woke up with amnesia. He woke up not knowing who he was, what he was, where he was.
That's nice.
Right? I was like, dude, that's a profound experience, man. He was
Yeah,
like,
the dude's just a tree.
he said the whole day he was like on a cloud.
Yeah.
Things in the material, like he didn't have labels for any things. Like he couldn't tell that was a fork or that was a nightstand. It was just like everything was he just didn't know what anything was.
Yeah.
UG Krishnamurti describes that during his awakening period.
What do you mean?
he couldn't label any objects. He had to ask his wife what things were.
Wow.
Just he didn't have any. He could see and not he could see perfectly clearly, but didn't
You didn't know what they were.
had no idea what anything was.
Dude, it was so interesting because I was on the phone with him, and I took it like that, like you just described. I was excited for him. But in the back of my mind, I also saw the other story of like, if this was someone else on the phone, they might be concerned. Like,
Yeah.
they might be worried about him.
Yeah.
And I was like, this isn't something to worry about.
Then I'm assuming his memory came back.
Yeah.
Yeah, the next day or whatever.
Yeah.
Bed.
By the end of the day, actually.
Toilet. Oh, okay.
Sometimes I wonder how much so an experience like that, taken from the right perspective, is positive and maybe comforting. Same experience from a different perspective be terrifying and cause for alarm. I'm wondering how often I experience feelings and sensations and phenomena that are either mundane or positive, and I mistake them in a threatening context.
Yeah.
Like how much of what I don't like is merely a misunderstanding.
Yeah. It makes me think about, I do want to go into some of these topics that we got. And I think this is a good enough segue, but when I started to see that, no, it's not. When I st- no,
Go
I mean,
ahead. Keep
when
going.
and
I'm not
it's
gonna let
never,
you.
it's never a good segue when you say this is a segue.
I'm not going to let you talk about any of your topics.
Is that I knew you came in with some heat, dude.
I mean, as soon as you just said that right now, like inside, I resolved to not let any planned topics occur.
So no planned topics?
Was it that easy to
Dissuade him.
destroy them?
Well, that's what's interesting. I didn't plan the topics. I was just driving and they popped in my head.
So where did they come from? Did they come from the devil or did they come from God?
Well, that brings us to the poem for today. A poem appeared as well.
Another segue.
Home from a demon, Adam?
No, it referred to what you were talking about last week. What the oscillation you were describing. Did it come from the devil? Did it come from God? How do you tell? Where is all this stuff occurring? Like, is this bad? Is it bad because I'm saying it's bad? In that sense, I'm the devil.
Exactly. Like that's kind of what I was just saying. Like how much of my negative experiences are simply because I've decided something beforehand is not good.
All of them.
Like, yeah, simply believing it's positive instead. What would happen?
Yeah.
All of the things that I associate with anxiety, any physical sensations I don't like. What if I were to say this is a manifestation of a positive change occurring? Instead of this is a manifestation of a insidious condition that needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I try to look at it like as like from a place of neutrality when that stuff happens. Like rather than going one way or the other with it, it's like, and for me, like opportunity can sometimes have like a positive sort of connotation to it or meaning, but I think about opportunity more as like, okay, I can go this way or that way. Like it's an opportunity to respond or like do something. So that's something that's been helpful. I mean, you get dumped by the girl, or like the job sacks you, or even something like positive comes, right? Like I think is positive, like the new job comes, or the new opportunity, the new thing comes. Like, well, this is just an opportunity. Like you don't have to do this, or you can do this. Like It's it's either this way or that way. Like you don't doesn't. It's your decision.
And that space of neutrality, that space of I'm finding it hard to do this without bringing in one of the topics that I shared.
That's all right. Reed will take care of that for you.
So the seat of the self, like that's the great reality, so to say, that the stillness, the undercurrent of all that is, the stillness beneath the manifestations of the stream or smoke of life, right? Whatever that is, to exist there is a space of neutrality, a space of nothingness, a space of void.
Mhm.
So in essence, and I guess in some sense, it's that's home. To be there, be where you are.
Yeah, that's what I believe.
We're gonna need to define that better. It sounds a little bit fluffy and nebulous to me.
All right, sink your teeth into it, Adam.
Well, I got to have some more context. I think everything's fluffy and nebulous. We're in it.
You're describing like a still void from which blah 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 blah, but is that just a is that just kind of a fuck, I don't know, a description you've adopted? Is it kind of a habit to speak of it like that?
It's an attempt to communicate something I've experienced.
What about experiencing right now?
Which brings me back to the group. One of the interesting things about that group we were going to is throughout the discourse, they constantly remind you of that. Like someone will say it, someone will reference it or point at it. And then all of a sudden I find myself just watching my breath and looking out the window and just experiencing my mind stop. My mind's not working anymore. I'm not trying to describe or communicate things, and everything just calms down. Everything just kind of spaces out.
That's what happens when I smoke a cigarette.
Yeah.
Every time. It's like,
Whoa.
I come back to myself. It's very interesting.
And that's it. That's the seat of the self. Come back to yourself. Like I would ask, how would you describe it?
I mean, what am I describing?
That's the point. There's no chatter. There's no inside chatter. There's no labeling. There's no judging. There's nothing.
Even that's saying too much. Can't speak about a thing that's not there.
Exactly.
But I can speak about what's not there.
Yes. That wouldn't you say that's what the work is recognizing what isn't?
Yeah.
Yeah, but to say what's not there is still a comparison to maybe a state when something was there, or a state where you see these things appear.
So the way I picture it is it's like there's a globe, like a really shiny light or a sun. And all of my ideas are like the veil over that, or like the crust around it. And so when I start to see that, like, I'm viewing myself this way, I'm viewing you in this way, I'm saying there's a narrative here, I'm actually preventing the light from seeing in some sense. And I guess the light is that nothingness, but that doesn't make sense either because they're two totally different ideas. It's almost like it's like getting my hands, my thoughts, my ideas involved in what is occurring, just strictly the moment as it is expressing itself. When I start to decide what it is, when I start to make life my business, is when it's just crust forms over the eyes, or crust forms over the light, or whatever it is that's allowing sight. And so the work, like Peter's describing, is recognizing and seeing what isn't this, the undefinable space beneath the world in which I experience.
Yeah, and what I mean by that is like what isn't is like what's not my business, like what isn't within my direct like touching point, right? Like the only thing I can do is have a look at myself and however that is. And I think I believe that like the mastery of an individual is their own personal philosophy or their own personal understanding of how they operate in the world, not in relationship to anybody else, but like in sorting it out for themselves. And you know, I'm reading this book right now, and it's talking a lot about stillness, and it's interesting because the guy's not super. It's a nice book, but you know, the author's not super like intense with all this stuff, but he was listing out these different cultures and how there was always a belief in some sort of power or some sort of, and the labels were obviously different throughout history, but for whatever reason, human beings were, you know, like seeing something or experiencing something that was greater than the individual self, but existed within them. And I don't know, as far as I can see, that the coolest people or whatever have their own independent philosophy or their own independent understanding of how they operate in the world. And I mean, Krishnamurti had it, Alan Watts had it, Thomas Merton had it, and they all had different ideas, or lack thereof ideas. But regardless, it was how they swam in the ocean. You know, I think that's the most important thing. If that makes sense.
What does that look like in practice?
Oh, I don't know. I think it comes down to like certainly grappling with ideas and looking at different cultures. And then, you know, that includes 12-step recovery, like all that stuff, right? But then looking at that stuff and making it individual, making it not a mechanism, but making it personal to the individual, regardless of what anybody else is doing. I think it requires a lot of mental masturbation, but then I also think it requires a lot of nothingness.
And exercise.
Yeah, and then, you know, having it be fluid, so it changes and it can move, and other ideas can be casted out, and then no idea, you know, it just doesn't really matter that much as long as it's coming from the individual that can see and understand, you know, how they operate in the world. Like, I mean, for me personally, like, I mean, I got interested in what was going on with me and how I'm like walking around in the world in my relationships to things. Like, how am I going to experience my life? And I don't believe that I don't get a say in what my life looks like or like how I experience it. Like, I don't think that I can just do nothing, like not move at all, and experiences will just like intentional experiences will occur. Experiences are always occurring, but it's the intentional ones that are interesting to me, that are exciting to me, that, you know, I'm curious about. But like, in order to do that, I had to see, like, I do this, or I think this, or I believe this, and then I do that, and then this is what I experience. And, you know, those had to be reworked to where I could see like what I was doing, and then what what experience occurred, and then sort of pivot and become more intentional of how I was living and what I was doing. And so far, like, it's grown. I mean, my life has grown, and I enjoy my life more now than I did last year and the year before that. But it's independent of what anyone else says or thinks. Like, I can listen to Alan Watts or Krishnamurti, or like, and I'm curious about that. I love that stuff. But then I always ask the question of like, well, what does this mean for me? Like, how is this going to like create more intentional experiences in my life? I don't know if that makes sense, but
I think to live fully independently of what another, like you're saying, the unique or the authentic individual is the one that embodies their own way of living, essentially, and it's not, not following the lead of others' thoughts, essentially. But I think that has to include my own mind. That my
yeah,
own mind is not the authority.
yeah,
Living
100%. I think it's a
with
tool.
that.
I think it's like having like a tape measure, in your tool belt. Like, I think it's just something that I can like that like can be tapped into, or like to be like to watch it, and how does it operate?
I Yeah. So Adam,
Yes. I think about programming. I think about like my brain is a tool, yes, but it's also falls asleep and starts to program itself according to what I'm digesting or what I'm experiencing. So every single morning or every single day, I think sleep kind of wipes away the programming in some sense, or kind of gives you a refresh or a reboot on your computer. So I just think about like what I'm trying to do is recognize where I'm programmed, and it's like a science experiment. It's like, what can I take away? Like, what beliefs? First of all, I don't think beliefs are helpful at all. I don't think, but I will say that stories are incredibly effective. So I don't know. To me, it just seems like I'm really into not knowing. I'm really into experiencing that amnesic state of wonder in the moment of what life wants to be. And so I'm interested in getting all my thoughts about everything. Like I think the mind is great for practical things. I think it's great for planning and, doing things like math, stuff like that, coordination. But it also, what Pete was sharing, it made me think about Bruce Lee too, because Bruce Lee, like, all he did was study philosophers and different martial art forms, and he arrived at the answer of no answer. Like, he basically developed a school that includes all forms, yet honors none of them. Like, it's every single martial artist that enters into that space, it's their responsibility to discover and to actualize whatever way works for them, because we're all so different.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the different ways to do this, or the different like ideas of how to do this, I mean, I know, Reed, you've looked into a lot of these, and I have too. Like, every person that I've ever read about or like learned from, they were all individuals within the space. Like, one Zen master to the next Zen master, they'll say different things, but along the same line. Like, it's a similar line of uh
conditioning.
yeah, I guess you could say that. I mean, yeah, but there's like it's an individual philosophy that like it's like something happens where it makes sense, or like like it doesn't need to be anything more than what it like it doesn't need to be morphed or anything. It's more like coming to a place of understanding, like what's going on, like what's how am I going to like how do I operate in the world? And a lot of those people say the same. I mean, Thomas Merton said a lot of the same things that, you know, Alan Watts talks about, right? But just in completely different ways, and they were completely different personalities as people. But like, you could see that each one of them on an individual basis, like grappled with themselves and like went inside and could see themselves differently or individually in relationship to everything else. And then you have people like you know, that self-realization fellowship, which was just when we went to that talk, dude, like fucking bizarre experience, bizarre. That dude was wild, man. Like, talk about reaching into my pocket and getting out my wallet, you know, like it was but I'm sitting there thinking like all of these people in this church are like coming here because they're like, one, they're curious like I was, but there's like they think there might be an answer to this thing. Like there might be something to get out of doing something like this. And then the pitch was, you know, ABC, whatever, if you do these things, like there is a path, or there's you know, these steps or whatever, and if you join our fellowship, our secret fellowship, which we're not going to give you any of the information until you pay your $150 or whatever and sign up for the program. Then
Yeah,
like,
coming from a guy who had been a monk for 20 years and still hadn't gotten it himself.
yeah, but like I'm sitting there in that experience, like saying, you know, this intuitively, this just doesn't feel right, because everybody else I've ever like listened to is just giving it away. Like they don't even care what someone does with it, because they themselves are comfortable. Like they're okay with themselves. They don't need anybody to join their group or join their team, or like they don't need to make money, or they don't, you know, there's a needlessness there. And you know, it was interesting. And I was like, Autobiography of a Yogi is one of my favorite books. I mean, I love that book. But it's like, my feeling is that Yogananda, the information that he was receiving from, you know, his studies, or, you know, his path, wasn't in alignment with what I experienced at the pitch show, you know, like the book doesn't seem like, it doesn't seem like he's trying to sell anything to anybody. And so that was sort of like but there again, like that's a huge movement. I mean, they've got tons of money. They have a huge endowment, right? Like they've got beautiful properties in California. It's crazy. But people are just like sheep and cattle, like just funneling into these different things, rather than like just sitting with themselves and figuring it out, like looking at themselves for what it is. Like, how am I going to operate in the world with me? Like, that's the question. And if I'm not interested in operating in the world with me, then I might as well just end the fucking show. You know, like, doesn't make any sense.
That's the question too. So how am I going to operate in the world as me or whatever? Like that, the answer to that is totally dropping the question. There's nothing involved beyond that. There's no, I'm gonna be me by doing this. I'm gonna be me by examining that. I'm gonna be me by trying this. Like there's the end of that is just dropping the question. Like the people we're talking about are just themselves thoroughly, and that's why they're fascinating. And the people like that come to those big meetings to listen to them talk are the people who want to be somebody. Ironically, they want to be the person who's not interested in being anything, so they've already failed.
Yeah. And I guess the way that I was looking at it is like, well, what is this for me? Like, not like, what am I going to do with this, or like be an enlightened person? Like, I've never cared about any of that stuff. It's like, how, like, if I'm gonna move around in this thing, and like wake up in the morning and like do like move around, like swim in the ocean, then like, how do I have a say in that, or don't I have a say in that?
I say that question doesn't need to be answered, and that by asking the question, I'm out of alignment. Unless that, you know, happens to be what I'm doing at the time, in which case it is in alignment. But like as a practice or a method, like like if I'm being myself authentically, I wouldn't fucking know it. I would have no clue that I'm doing anything.
Yeah.
If I feel like I'm doing something, then I'm, there's the trying to be there, which is fine. But, if I'm interested in my own experience,
Well, see, here's the thing. I think, and I just believe that if I'm wanting to be something and I understand that I'm wanting to be something, then I can experience peace in that.
yeah.
The issue happens when I was wanting to be something, but like I wanted to be something, but I didn't realize that that's what I was doing. I was like, oh, I'm just myself. I'm just myself. But then I'm ruminating constantly about being somebody else.
The only
I'm
real
just doing my thing, man. No, you're not. No, you're not.
the only real action, I guess I could say, like that seems to be possible. Like basically, it boils down to like what I can do is be aware, and that's it. That's the end of it.
Yeah.
Just be aware of what
That's
I'm
what I was getting
thinking,
at.
what I'm doing, where I'm going, what I'm
That's what I was
feeling.
getting at.
That's it.
Yeah.
And in that, there's an authenticity, because then, like, I'm struggling with something. That's great. That's totally authentic.
Right.
Like the authentic person doesn't like just dissolve into a void of non-resistance.
Right.
Or maybe they do. It does. There's not a. I guess the other mistake is, we set someone up as the example of authenticity, and then try to be that, even if it's an idea that my mind has come up with, and it's not something I'm seeing from someone else. And it's this idol of authenticity, and then I'm inauthentic because I'm not I guess because I'm not aware, but I am authentic because I can't never not be me fully, but I can not be aware of it. But again, maybe it's the awareness that makes the difference, because there doesn't seem to be.
Yeah. So I went to a meeting. I listened to this guy talk yesterday, and he was talking about his story, and he's been sober for 31 years. And this is like in his early days when he was, looking to catch sobriety, and was at a meeting one day and he listened to this guy give a talk, and this guy was just buzzing. He was just in it, and super attractive experience. And this dude was like, yeah, that's the guy that I want to ask to help me. That's the guy. And so for whatever reason, he didn't ask him on the spot. He ended up coming back the next week and the guy wasn't there. And he came back the week after and the guy wasn't there. And so he went up to one of the old timers and was like, hey, have you seen this guy? I was going to ask him to work with me. And the dude goes, well, haven't you heard? And the other guy says, no, like, what are you talking about? He goes, after that night, that guy went back to his place and shot himself. Right. And so like, here's this guy that's like, what I'm getting at is this point of like not being able to really know, like it doesn't make sense. Like, here's this person that was talking about all of these great things that have happened in sobriety and like how his life has changed and blah, blah, blah. But then at the end of the night, like he goes home and he shoots himself. And like, those are two totally different messages, right? Like they're two totally different types of things from an external perspective, And I just thought that was really interesting. And that's not super uncommon. That's not a really uncommon experience, but it got me thinking about what you were talking about, Reed, like this.
Man, dude. What a powerful story.
Yeah.
So it's got me thinking like it had me thinking about the message or the verb or like whatever it was that occurred being the thing. Whoever's doing the message is irrelevant. You're never going to know that, but you can know what is occurring. And the guy, it brought him back to the space for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It was like a fishing line. It was like,
Yeah.
it's that old, and all the stuff we were talking about earlier is making me think about purity, pure action, pure manifestation, pure occurrence. When these things just, someone says thank you and you're like, I wasn't doing anything to please anybody, like it's just like something, things are just occurring. And if you're in the middle of the bed, if you're in the middle of the seat of yourself, so to say, you're busy experiencing. You're not interested in telling or showing or anything. You're just there. And then these things like kind of melt off of you. And that guy, that's so interesting. It's making me think about like Kevin Spacey. We're not supposed to like any Kevin Spacey films now because he likes hooking up with boys. And then Michael Jackson. I can't like Michael Jackson music anymore because he also likes hooking up with boys.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, wait a second. Like, is Michael Jackson the creative manifestation that I've enjoyed, or is he something different? It's like all of a sudden I have to, and to get even deeper than this, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, where do
but see, that's beside the point. Like, I can appreciate something for just what it is. Like, I can appreciate the guy that's giving a talk that's creating a buzz and energy for for what it is. It's just that. But it's not personal. It's not like, it's personal to me because I'm experiencing it, but like at the end of the day, because of what he's saying, that doesn't mean that I know him.
Right.
Like, when someone does something exceptional, or like I deem it to be exceptional in my eyes based on the way that I see it, like that doesn't mean that I know the person. That doesn't mean that I understand the person, or like, and that's what I'm saying is like these are independent things. These are independent things. Like the guy that kills himself, that's not personal because I did anything. Like, I didn't, there wasn't anything I could do.
No, but you see the message the guy gave, right? It was
Yeah.
a message of hope.
Yeah.
And then he kills himself.
Yeah.
So to me, I'm thinking about the guy in the audience, that like, if we're looking at life as being like a refractor or for your individual experience, that life is unfolding according to you. Like, this is for you. This is happening right now for you, right? Then it's the person who's in that meeting seeing it. It's not about anything other than what they're experiencing.
Right. And that's the point. That's all it is.
Because whatever that guy was saying, there could have been 80 other people in that meeting who'd heard him say this same spiel for 10 years and be miserable. Like, they've known the guy for 10 years coming in spouting the same stuff. But for that one guy in that moment for him, that was exactly what he needed to hear.
Right.
And then such a teachable moment, right?
Yeah.
Because you think you found something, and this is what Reed was talking about. You think you found your guy. You think you found the answer. You think you found the person that's going to show you and help you live and be and all that. And then it's like, oh no, he's gone.
Yeah.
He's gone.
Yeah. But that's the point though. That's where like recognizing myself completely as a human being, having many different, like what I say and what I do can be two different things. And like understanding my humanness, that it's the same as it's potentially the same as a guy that's creating a buzz with his words, but then putting a gun to his head that night. Right? Like that's a human being. Like, that's a human being. And like what someone says or what I say doesn't necessarily mean that that's what I do. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's I might have had an authentic experience, but what I say and what I do can be different, can be in different spaces, like can be different.
So wouldn't you say, and wouldn't you say that, like, at least for me, the philosophy, like, what is my individual philosophy, right? Because I think I think you're spot on there. Like, it's the individual's responsibility to come to terms with how they're going to live life. Like,
Right.
what is your row down the
Right.
stream? And for me, getting as close as I possibly can to the razor's edge of truth, where my words and my actions are in total alignment.
Yeah.
I don't say things that aren't true.
Right.
It matters so much to me. And I feel like, because that's the only way that Reed was talking about the authentic experience. For me, and this is just for me, my personal philosophy, it's the only way that life can be played. It doesn't want to fuck with you if you're not being in your truth, if you're not being how you are. And how do you even get there? That's a whole other thing. Like, how do I speak truth? What I'm saying truth? All those questions occur.
Yeah, and I think Reed said it, and I think Anthony DeMello said it really well in his book Awareness, but that's what it is. It's awareness.
Yeah.
It's being able to see. Like, and I'm not saying like I deserve this, but like I've done the fucking work. Like I've done the work. Like I got interested in my life. I got interested in what was going on with me. And like I had to go through all of that stuff. Like I've had to go through all of my ideas, as many as I'm aware of, and like my own philosophies, and see like this is what was creating the actions that I took in my life, and this is what was creating the state of being that I experienced, right? Like I had to go into all of that stuff and face all of it.
Yeah, but did you sit down one day and decide this is an exciting project, or did you get
No,
basically forced to?
no. That's the thing. For me, it was fun. For me, that it was a spontaneous experience.
Yeah. So I can't take credit for that either.
No, I can't. But what I'm saying is that like that moment of spontaneity, however that happened, and look, I've tried to figure out how it happened plenty of times, but like the point is that something happened in my life, something happened for me, and I've been interested in my life ever since. Like I've been interested in my life ever since that.
Yeah.
And
So
somehow it gave me the ability to like face me rather than point the finger at you guys all the time. And I don't know how it happened. I mean, I couldn't tell you. I have ideas about it, but like it just
that's
reversed
kind of
itself.
the big kind of the big paradox with what we're talking about. It's only
Yeah.
interesting if you've had some kind of spontaneous experience that's made such things interesting. And if it's already interesting, then you're already going to be okay.
Right. Right.
It's like I don't know.
But how many people do you experience like at work and like at the grocery store and like going to dinner, and like how many people do you experience that are like actually curious about their lives?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I have an idea. Like I don't think it's that. I think there's a few people I've met that are, I would say, they're curious, like they're interested. They want to see what happens. But
really interested in like exploring themselves, the mind, reality, consciousnness, what I am, all that stuff.
yeah.
No, it's actually an odd pursuit, I would say.
Yeah.
Which is weird, right? I feel like there's nothing else to do. Like, what else would you do?
Everything else is a distraction from that, essentially. Well, I don't want to say that, but yeah, what else would you do seriously or earnestly, I guess?
So I used to give out that I bought several copies of Awareness by Anthony DeMello. And I used
Yeah.
to ask people if they were interested in, like, if they were open to reading a book,
Yeah.
and I would pass it out, like I would give it to them. I gave it to 4 people, to 3 women and 1 dude, and none of them finished the book. They couldn't finish the book.
Yeah.
Now, I'm passing out this book because I fucking loved it. Like, it was great. It was like a kick in the ass. Like I was like, this is great. Like this dude, I love what this guy's talking about.
Yeah.
You know, like I was interested in it, and it wasn't offensive to me. Like it was great. I was like, yeah, I understand what he's talking about. But then passing that book out, and I literally just wanted to see if people would read it. And all 4 of these people were all like, I guess you could say upstanding citizens, whatever that means, but like they're well employed. They have, you know, like they have resources. Like they're not, you know, but they were interested in reading a book that, you know, they were curious, they were interested in the book. Like they were open to what I had to share with them. And they couldn't finish the book. And I would ask them like every couple of weeks, I'd be like, hey, how's the book going? Like, what do you think of the book? And sometimes I would get a response and sometimes I wouldn't get a response. And then when I asked them, there was only one person I think one person got like 4 chapters in or 5 chapters in. Everyone else couldn't get through the first 2 chapters.
It's a painful, it's an extremely uncomfortable book. And for most
It
people,
is.
it would be a horrible experience to read it, just like reading Krishnamurti or
Yeah.
would be awful.
Well,
Yeah.
because it challenges the world that you've grown comfortable in. It challenges a world of definitions and roles.
And by challenge, like I feel like it doesn't quite get to the root of quite how challenging it is. Like it disturbs the foundations upon which one has built their belief systems.
Yeah.
Like the very nature of good is critical, is a key piece in most people's belief systems in which they exist comfortably. Like, you know, the idea of an absolute good and bad, just for instance, is people will almost violently defend that exists.
Yep.
Because if you can't mess with something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is true. Can we do someone with your audio read?
I'm in the car.
Why?
Why?
No,
What does it sound like?
it's tough to hear.
Let me put in my AirPods.
That is true. That the idea of good and evil is so rooted in not only our religious but our cultural narratives.
Our cultural is essentially a religious narrative too. That's the fucked up part.
I mean, everything that I still say, oh man, that was good. That was excellent. I still say those words.
And yeah, well, so Peter mentioned earlier by talking about seeing opportunities as opportunities. There are different ways this can go, and that's the end of it. And you know, there's freedom in that, because my first reaction to something like that will be to judge which choice is the good one and which choice is the bad one.
Right.
Like at any given opportunity, somehow it seems to automatically be split into a good and bad outcome or a good and bad decision. And that's just absolutely false. It doesn't exist. Yeah. And without the overlay of good and bad, life opens up tremendously. In the not in the sense that like I'm suddenly gonna start doing things that are bad. That's not what I mean. In the sense that like just anytime there are artificial fences around me, anytime those are removed, there's a sense of freedom and opening up, and regardless of what choices I make.
Yeah, I mean, I even like I think about I think about that conditioning of good and bad, and like how I was like just what I experienced as a kid growing up, and like I was labeled bad. Like
Uh-huh.
like like the things I was doing were considered bad, like getting trouble in school, having, being a troubled child on all of my hockey teams, and like not being a team player, and like too hard on myself, and like it was this negative connotation, like it was bad, and really it wasn't bad.
Yeah.
I was doing something. I was doing things, operating the best way that I could at the time that I was doing them, not understanding that maybe I could do it a different way, like maybe I could have a different experience. But because it was bad, I got entrenched in the bad idea, and it just kept getting bad and bad and bad and bad and bad.
Yeah.
And then there were just little sparkles of like good, like my grandmother would say like, "Oh, you're such a good boy, you're such a good boy." But like in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, everyone else is telling me that I'm bad. Like I'm always getting in trouble, right? Like I can't keep friendships. I'm getting suspended at school. Like it was all this different stuff, right? And so it was so confusing because I had this good idea and I had this bad idea. And that permeated my entire life. Like like good and bad can be, you can put different words for good and bad, but it was like this or that. And I'm operating in the world and I'm like, I don't know which one it is. Like I think it's this way, but then because it's always been this way, I have to keep up with the Joneses and like keep propagating that, keep, perpetually taking action as that, because that's my identity. I think that's my identity. And then every once in a while I would do something good and like feel good about it or whatever. But then like I never knew, I was so confused. And then all of a sudden I recognized like, no, it wasn't good or bad. It was just, this is what you did. And this was the experience that came from this. And then this is what you did you did this. And then this was the experience that you had. Like, which one do you prefer? Like how, like,
Yeah. It's practical. There's no beliefs got to come into it, like we were talking about at the beginning.
yeah,
This is very practical.
yeah,
And then
exactly.
what's more harmful, like the behaviors you had that were labeled bad, or everyone's reaction to it? What caused more problems? What caused more harm?
The reaction.
Yeah, the people's non-acceptance of what you were doing rather than
Right,
what you were doing was
right,
the problem was theirs.
right. And it keeps going and it keeps going and it keeps going and it keeps going and it keeps going. And then there's like, I'm so powerless. Like there's no, I can't move. And then hence the feeling of being in a fucking cage. Like being in a total, like a cage like a cage in myself, like just a total, I couldn't move it. I couldn't move.
Yeah, yeah. And then and that limitation doesn't exist, but like
Right,
these belief systems really are like physical boundaries in a way.
right.
There's a feeling of physical restriction associated with these boundaries. It's very odd.
Yeah. And then that's all of the stuff that DeMello talks about in his book. And he essentially takes a wrecking ball to that whole framework.
Right. And
Like
yet that is sacred. You
he
can't
just
touch it.
destroys it. Yeah. And he's
Yeah.
like, no, Peter, you're not good or bad. You just are. Like, you're not special. You're
It's
a
a
human
terrible
being.
idea to most people.
Yeah. It would have been for me like 8 years ago. There's no way I would have read that book. No way. No
Yeah.
fucking way.
So would you say, and I'm trying to connect my experience with what you just described, Peter. Would you say that, I guess, could you say that life turned out the way it did for me because I couldn't cope with all of this? I couldn't play the game. I couldn't adapt. I couldn't cope with what the world was showing me and telling me. So I just self-destructed.
No. What I believe is that it was just an expedited path, right? And then the only thing in my life that ever had removed that cage or that trap that I was in, that framework, was alcohol. And so like I could put alcohol in my body, and that would change my entire perception, my entire, it changed my like there was no good and bad when I was drinking. Right. And because of that, it I don't want to say it forced me, but it expedited that destruction to where I could come to a place where it was like, well, this is what it is. Like this is just what it is. So, there was no longer a label of good or bad. It was just, this is what it is. And so here, this is an opportunity. This is just an opportunity. So, you can keep doing what you've been doing, or you can do something completely different that you have no experience with.
So
And
maybe
because of that is what changed it.
the framework of good or bad keeps our actions limited, and thus maybe prevents us from adequately learning, or like more fully learning about what I am and what life is. And so it's like a
Right.
stunting mechanism to growth.
Yeah.
It keeps me from learning.
Well, think about this too, right? Like even in like the recovery community or whatever, like, I mean, how many people would say to me when they found out that I, was sober, would say like, "Oh, you're doing so good.
Yeah.
Like you're doing so great. Like I'm just happy that you're doing great. I'm happy that like all this stuff's going." And in my eyes, I don't look at being sober as good or bad. I don't look at like my life today being something good. It's not good or bad. Like I'm not sitting there going like, "Oh, I'm such a good guy because I'm not in jail anymore and I'm, like I'm, staying out of trouble and all." Like, no, it's literally just it's like, well, this is what it is. Right? Like this is just what it is. It's not, this isn't, I'm not being good or bad. This is what I'm being. Like this is where my life led me to, and there's no like, I mean, I don't
Yeah,
see it that way.
yeah, I had such a hard time with that when people would share that with me about how proud they were of me and how good I was doing. Such a
Yeah.
hard time.
I
Like you
understand
did it anyway.
Yeah.
Like it was my, like I somehow made that happen anyway. That's
Right.
the other odd part. And like everyone's supposed to know that in an AA meeting, but yet we constantly give others credit, or feel like we should be taking credit, or suggest others take credit. Very odd.
It's
But then
funny.
here's the thing too. Here's the other thing too, is that like on the other side of the coin, I've met people that have had the same sort of label on them that I've had, which was that this like you're bad, or like you're fucked up, or you're messed up, or you're this or you're that, right? Like all these different labels that have a negative idea associated to it. And like I'm able to come into those situations and experiences and say, you know what? Like, no, you're not bad and you're not good. Like this is just what it fucking is. Like this is,
Dude, it's the most I had
what do you want to do with it?
it's funny to me that the most jarring and enlightening experiences I've ever had have come from people that did not care. They
Right.
do not care.
Yeah.
Like that. And I know it's unsettling, which makes me a room full of people that know what we're talking about do not give a shit. And it's unsettling. But it's
And there's
what
no
I, it's,
judgment.
but like, but there's no judgment. There's no good or bad. You're sharing your experience. Like it is what it is. No one gives a shit. And that can be jarring, but has in my experience has proven to be the breeding ground of growth, is when I realize like whatever I think matters, or whatever I feel, right? My feelings, right? That's what wakes you up when you realize it's all bullshit.
Yeah.
So when you're in a room full of people who are, they're confident in themselves and their own experience, and therefore they don't care, that's, I think one of the reasons that can be jarring is that that's the total dissolution of personal power.
Right.
If someone doesn't care, I don't have power over them in any way. I can't make them think
Yep.
what I want them to think. I can't make them have the image I'm trying to project.
Yep.
I can't make them think I'm good.
Yep.
I have
And-
no power over such a person.
Yeah.
And then in our normal daily interactions, I guess we're always trying to project power in that way, like by controlling the image that they have of us.
Right. 100%. And that's all through life. Like that's just all through life. That's that neutral person that doesn't give a shit, like that recognizes that it's an individual life. I mean, I used to have guys early on when I first came into this sober thing, like guys would say to me, they'd be like, Peter, I don't give a fuck about your feelings. And I don't care whether you do this or you don't. Doesn't fucking matter to me. Because I'm going to go home and I'm going to hang out with my wife and I've got a couple of kids and I'm going to run my business and I'm going to do what I want to do and I'm going to live my life. It's of no consequence to me whether you do this or you don't. Like powerful stuff. And the dude's not bullshitting me. Like I know it. I know it. And it was one of the first times that nobody was saying, like, you need to do this, or you need to get well, you need to get better, you got to stop being a fuck up, you got to stop doing this shit, start doing this. Like there was none of that. It was just, no, this is what it is. Like, and I've been where you're at, and I knew it. I knew it. And that was attractive. And the cool part is that today I'm able to come from more or less the same sort of understanding, not because someone said it to me, but because I got to experience it and I recognize that what this person is doing isn't any of my business. It's not my business. It isn't. I'm available, but I don't care. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's not a comfortable feeling. People want to be, because again, like,
yeah, you're right.
It removes my sense of importance. It removes my sense of being special. Wow.
Yeah. It's a total, it totally fucks the historical narrative.
Uh-huh.
It totally fucks it.
Weird.
Takes out all of the emotional power.
It's weird seeing how much a sense of self-worth or self-confidence is really based on other people's ability to be emotionally affected by me. That's kind of what I'm seeing right now.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Huh.
Yeah, it's like throwing a stone in a pond, and however many ripples that you get shows you how important you are.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
And I think that's certainly an element of freedom. Like when I can be available, but I'm separated.
When I don't have to make the ripples.
Yeah, I'm not enmeshed with the whole thing. I'm just like, hey, like I'm over here. This is what I'm doing, and I'm available, but I mean, you're not gonna fucking hear from me. I mean,
Yeah, all of a sudden you're the stone and the pond.
yeah, I don't care.
And that's really what we're talking about here is you're playing with yourself. That's what life is. You're literally playing with yourself.
Yeah. And I think that's the most important philosophy, right? Like understanding it for myself, just for me. And it's changed a lot. Like where I am today and like how I see things is different from, 5 or 6 years ago when Reed and I used to talk about all this stuff ad infinitum. I mean, we talk about this stuff all the time, but like, it's just over time, it's just become simpler and simpler and simpler and simpler. And it's not complicated, but like, and I enjoy that. I enjoy the philosophical piece of life. Like I enjoy seeing where other people might be accurate or might have authentic experiences and like listening and reading about it. And, like, and then there's times where I'm not interested, I'll Beetlejuice on Howard Stern for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
It's interesting how, we could talk about this stuff for years and years, and like the stuff I believed or saw, a year ago, 2 years ago, 6 months ago is not my experience, now.
yeah,
But at the time, we're talking about these things and seeing these things. It's true, and it's authentic, and it's helpful, and then it becomes, but it's not. There's no substance to it because it's this fluid thing. Like,
Yeah.
what's helpful is allowing that to continue to evolve and totally morph into the opposite. Like,
yeah,
It's learning how to swim. It's
Yeah, it's like,
yeah,
have you ever-
it's like learning how to swim, but then like you can't give definite positions to the rocks. I'm imagining floating down a river. You can't give definite positions to the rocks in the rapids because you're moving with the river.
right,
So like any attempt to map out and have a concrete way of what things are
yeah,
and how to navigate it, and sometimes the river's moving very slowly and it works for a while, and sometimes the river's moving real fucking fast and that shit falls. Any map you make of it, like, because the map I'm making of the river is centered on me, who is floating in the river.
yeah,
So it's always changing and updating.
Yeah, and it's your strokes. Like you're learning your strokes.
And
Like,
I'm the only one that's at that position in the river.
yeah.
No one
Right.
else can occupy my particular space in the river. Therefore, the
Right.
map can't ever completely apply to anyone else.
right,
And that's why the experience of living is some form of art.
yeah. I
And
agree.
it's-
So
I can't tell anyone else how to do their art. It's
no,
not art if you do that.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, art teachers like that are the worst.
Yeah.
I had one in elementary school. It was crushed creativity. Just tell me like I'm wrong and that like criticize like, never mind. Anyway, keep going.
oh no, I had that experience. I wasn't ever a great artist. The only
That statement doesn't even make sense.
I
We're
know.
told shit about like that. Like, how can you not be a great artist? How can it doesn't make sense? It doesn't. It's an absurd statement, and we share it. We believe it. We're taught it by shitty art teachers.
Yeah. So like Adam, you brought up like the point of like the mind or whatever, and so when Reed was talking about the river, the way that I see it for myself is that, like, rather than being, and I've said this before, but like rather than being like having these oars and like rowing, like having to row the boat like upstream to get to where I want to go to, or like fighting the current or fighting, like, you know what I mean, like struggling with the flow of life. The way that I look at it today is like I'm always going down the river. Like I'm always just like floating down this thing, right? And rather than having these oars, like I don't have an engine, I don't have any like crew or anything, but what I do have is a sail. And like I see my mind as being the sail. And like what I can do is I can move the sail, like I can shift the sail like a couple of inches or 3 inches, like we're talking like little movements, and then use the whole thing to move the boat. But
And
like,
and my whole take is that you are the river too. Like, so like it's not, for me, it's not even about sales. It's about listening and letting things occur and like just leaving things alone.
no, but what I'm saying is that I can use what I have to make I can make a shift, but I'm not going to be in control.
Right. But
I'm
think
not going
about
to be in control of how it comes to me.
think about it in the moment. How quickly can you adjust your sail?
The moment is absolutely immutable.
Well, I don't do anything in the moment.
Yeah, that's true. You're right. You're right.
I mean,
What can be done? It's already here.
yeah. But I see that. Like, I understand that.
Yeah.
I understand that. And like, and I've shared this before, but like one of my things was finances, right? Like for me, I don't see finance. I don't like, there's nothing, I can't eat a dollar bill, like, and I can't like nourish myself from my bank account, right? But like when you've experienced financial resources, like a resource that's at a greater level than the rest of the game, like it makes life seem, it makes like navigating the world, it makes it seem like it's you know, it's really easy. Like the, you know, it's, you don't understand like people having a fear of money or anything like
Well,
that, right?
this brings us back to the beginning with the vision, because you are that. Like that's what you are right now.
Right, I understand that today, but I didn't understand that years ago. And so what I'm saying is that like when the financial resource of the game goes to zero and there's no more energy to use, it's like having, there's no more like power left in my character in the video game. Like I'm on my 9th live.
But that's what I'm like the fuel that is finances.
Yes, it's just an energy. It's just a resource. And so what I'm saying is that in order for that resource in order for that that element of the game to revitalize itself and to grow, like to you know, to start moving in the other direction, like to start going up,
Right.
right? Like I had to move the sail.
Yeah.
Like
But
I had to move the sail.
that's I would say that's another game. That's a game.
Yes, but right. But what I'm saying is like, could I have stayed where I was 100%? Like I was completely peaceful with nothing. Like, I mean, with no pieces in the game. Like I didn't have any resources.
But I think that's what we're kind of talking. Correct. I may be off the mark here, but it felt like the theme of this whole thing was the game.
Yeah, but then you have games
What?
within the game.
A game in a game.
You have games within the game.
A dream within a dream.
There's different pieces within the piece.
So I started noticing this really weird thing. I started playing the money game on Star Wars. So there's an economy, and I can craft things and sell things and buy materials to craft more things, to sell more things for profit. So I've been playing this money economy game. And it's the weirdest thing. I noticed that in the beginning, the numbers were really little. And I was happy with 1,000 credits here, 10,000 credits there. But as I continue to play the game, the numbers are bigger and I'm having to spend more money to make more money. And there's this risk where it's like, am I about to spend 250 million credits on these materials that might not sell? I might not make a profit, but I'm about to cross that threshold. And I did it earlier when I jumped from 10,000 to 100,000. Like I'm about to cross, am I willing to risk this to cross this threshold?
Right. And those are the little, see, those are the little deaths that take place. Those are the little deaths that take place where I move into that space, and then all of a sudden another idea is challenged. Another idea that I'm holding on to is challenged. And it's like, there again, it's an opportunity. Can I move through, can I do that? Can I move through that thing and let go of it?
Dude, it's crazy because it's like I'm about to spend all my money on materials with no assurance that I'll make it back. But the likelihood is kind of high. But it's still, I'll have zero once I invest everything into this.
Right. And what I'm saying is when I was at the resource of zero, when I had no no energy, no financial energy to play with, I didn't even care about that stuff. Like it wasn't, my state of being was so pure, like it just didn't matter, you know, like I didn't, it wasn't, it was like, oh wow, like this is just what it is. Like,
Yeah, you went for a year and a half and then you became a person again and was like, what the fuck is this?
yeah, yeah, right. And then, but then it was like, I'm not gonna reignite the old framework. I'm not gonna reignite the old stuff. Like I'm just gonna keep doing, what I'm doing. But then I got intentional of like, okay, well, I made it a game. I was like, how can I, so where does this financial resource come from? Well, this resource, this financial resource or this financial energy comes from applying skills into this game, into these games.
Mm.
So how do I, so it was like, well, okay, I'm gonna pick up some skills. And so I started picking up skills. And as I picked up skills for myself, then all of a sudden I had access to other games. And as I had access to other games, that financial resource started, the financial energy started growing and growing and growing. And I was like, oh, cool. I'm not doing all of this stuff so that I can get money. I'm doing all of this stuff so that I can become.
Yeah, and you get deeper levels of knowledge and awareness of
Yeah,
the table.
100%. But but the intention was like understanding, like, well, how do I experience this resource? Oh, I don't experience the resource by getting any of it. I experience the resource by becoming it,
Being it, yeah.
by being it. And then, so then all of a sudden it was like, oh, well, I'm being this and I'm picking up these skills and I'm doing these things and I'm moving my sails, like I'm pivoting the sail along the river, like using whatever it is to move me in directions intentionally, seeing where it goes, not knowing what's going to happen,
Yeah.
but trusting that,
Yeah,
but
that totally makes sense.
trusting it to take care of me. And then here I am, 6 years later, and the financial resource is way up, and I have way more options, and I can play more games, and I can do more things, not because I was ever intentional about getting anything, but I was intentional about being something, like
Yeah.
being it. And the greatest thing is that it isn't a burden. It's not a burden. It's not like, oh, I've got to keep up with the Joneses or I got to do this. It's like, no, I'm having fun with it. I'm sincere about it, but I'm not taking any of it seriously, right? So it's that whole shift changes. And then I don't have any more worry about the financial energy piece.
Yeah, because you've become the guy that does the thing, and the thing, this is what the thing does.
That's it. And that's not a good thing or a bad thing.
No, it's a being.
It is.
Yeah, it's a
It just
being
is.
thing.
It just is what it is.
That is, yeah, it was so powerful when we did that vision board exercise, man. Like it was like all the ideals on that board, and then you saying you are that. Like this isn't something out there. This is something that you are. So what does somebody that is this do?
Right.
And then the question, right, elicits the action from within me.
Right. Right. It's just simple. And that's where it doesn't, I'm not saying any of this stuff matters, but what I am saying is that in terms of my life experience, the understanding that whatever I am is whatever I experience. Right.
Yes. That's why I say that you are the river just as much as the boat.
Yeah. No, I agree with that 100%. But with the game within the game.
Well, that's what your sail's doing. Your sail could be your ears and your eyes. You're seeing the current, you're adjusting, you're acclimating.
Yeah. Yeah, and that goes hand in hand with my physical condition, with my spiritual condition, with my mental state, with my whole life experience, right, is all wrapped up into that beingness.
Well, we got about a minute left. And Real Wizard Reed left just as quickly as he came, or didn't come.
He had to grab a clove.
That's right. That was an interesting point because he nailed it, right? Like that. That's what the drugs used to do for me.
Oh yeah, man.
What he described.
Yeah, I remember that first smoke in the morning, man, was like, that was a out of body experience. That was like, it's like 7:30 in the morning and it's cold here in Atlanta, and I get a cup of coffee, like a nice cup of coffee, like an Italian dark roast or something, right? Like a good cup of coffee with just a dash of honey. I got my Marlboro Reds, the pack of Marlboro Reds and the lighter just looking right at me, and I'm like, step outside and just pluck in a dart and woof. Oh,
Man, so good. Oh wait, so is, I guess. I don't know.
yeah, can't be anywhere else with that first smoke in the morning.
No, man.
Yeah. And then it was always impending doom when I was